I've had different ups and downs with money, because we all do, right?
Yeah.
It's just inherent with being, I think, human and working and having money in our world, that it doesn't always necessarily flow like we want it to. It's not always consistent. It's not always abundant. We have unexpected bills that come up. We have impacts like I have this year on my business, where I couldn't work and do things that I usually would do. And money changes all the time.
Yeah. Welcome to the Joyous Path to Millions podcast with me, your host, Emily June Wilcox, serial entrepreneur, seven-figure business owner, mindset junkie, creator of the Money Wound Medicine program, devoted mama of two, and lover of coffee and crystals. My mission is to put more money in the hands of soulpreneurs through healing money wounds, building abundant businesses, and balancing masculine and feminine energy. When we do this, we collectively up-level the frequency of the planet and help usher in new paradigm wealth. Each week, a new episode will air featuring expert advice, live coaching, and guest interviews where we'll dive into honest money conversations and the behind-the-scenes truth of building our aligned fempires. We all deserve a healthy, empowered relationship with money so we can experience more freedom, pleasure, and joy on our joyous path to millions. So get ready and let's dive in. What is up, beautiful souls? Welcome back to the Joyous Path to Millions podcast. Have I told you lately how much I freaking love hosting this show? I get to connect to the coolest humans and ask them all of the questions that I'm so curious about and talk transparently about money. It is honestly such a dream come true. And I was just thinking the other day about how brave I was to start this podcast. It was for me. I knew I needed to talk about my money and own my money stuff. And if you go back and listen to the first episode, I think you can hear it in my voice. I was doing it scared. It's not that it was easy for me. It's that I just knew I needed to do it. And I also knew that the only way I was going to get more comfortable was to do it. And I think often in business, we just shy away from the things that we're not good at. But it's just like going to the gym. You've got to put in the reps and build the muscle over time. And I'm so proud that here I am today hosting a top 3% global podcast. So if you're new around here, hi, I'm Emily June Wilcox. I am the host of this show. I'm a serial entrepreneur, a seven-figure business owner, a mindset junkie, the creator of the Money Wound Medicine program, a devoted mama of two, and loving life in Southern California. My mission is helping women create the wealth they desire by healing their money wounds, which allows women to act from purpose and passion instead of obedience and obligation. When we do this, we will create a new planet and we will usher in new paradigm wealth. I love, 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 love helping women walk the joyous path to millions. It is an absolute freaking honor. So thank you for being on this journey with me. I have an incredible guest today that you are absolutely going to love. First of all, she has an Australian accent, so need I say more? It's going to be delightful on your ears. But Shannon Dunn is the CEO of Thrive Factor. She has created just such an interesting female-centric, dynamic self-leadership program. And she created an archetypal profiling called the Thrive Factor framework, which we dive into. But it's this really unique methodology that helps her clients take advantage of their innate personal psychology. She's been a coach for 19 years. So this woman has seen so much and offers so much wisdom and joy. She's a natural creative and you are going to love her story. So let's dive right in. Shannon Dun, welcome to the Joyous Path to Millions podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Finally, we've been talking about catching up and doing podcast chats for a while.
We have. I know it's been a minute and Everyone listening can hear your gorgeous accent and imagine that you might be on the other side of the world. So we had to navigate some time zone stuff in order to get here, but here we are.
Sure did, Em. So yeah, for anyone who is listening and can hear that I sound different to a lot of people that are possibly on the podcast, I'm on the west coast of Australia, so in the beautiful beachside suburbs of Perth, which is a capital city here. So yeah, still a West Coast girl though.
I love it. West Coast, best coast. I feel the same with the US. Now, my husband and I did live in Australia for a year, but the west coast of Australia, Western Australia, was the only place that we didn't make it to.
It's a long way from a lot of things. I think Perth, where I'm based, is considered one of, if not the most isolated capital city in the world. So it's a long way to get here. We're a long way from a lot of things, but I don't dislike that. Just work around it in business though, because there's a lot of things very much alive and happening, mostly in the North American time zone.
Right.
That's never stopped me.
Yeah. I mean, that's the amazing thing about having these online businesses is that we do get to be so global. But I know you do speaking events as well. So are you going to conferences and speaking on actual stages?
I have done, and I plan on getting back to that. So my plan moving into 2024 is to start searching down more platforms, literal stages to speak on. I love the virtual stage, but I also do love a stage. I never ever imagined that I would be saying that, but I do. And I can't wait to get back to that and traveling, because I absolutely adore being out in the world and actually connecting with real people, meeting people that maybe I know online but have never met in person, and all of it come with actually being present in someone's space.
I agree. There's nothing like getting in the actual room and feeling another person's energy. So I know you've been in business for a hot second, and like anytime I hear that someone has like archetypes or a framework, to me, it's indicative that they've been doing this for a while, because I think it's just hard to do that right out the hop. Like it takes working with a lot of humans to start to really notice the patterns. So I would love to just hear, like, how did you start in entrepreneurship and how did it evolve into where you're at today?
That's a big story. So we'll try with the highlights reel. So I often will mention this, that really I guess the spark for being in business goes back to childhood, where both of my sets of grandparents, my grandmother on one side, grandmother and grandfather on the other side, had their own businesses. So I grew up in a space where they were either one of the single grandmother, she was still working, serial entrepreneur, multiple things on the go all the time. The other grandparents had retired, but I heard stories constantly around being a business owner and working for yourself. And it just kind of made sense to me. And the one grandmother who still had her own businesses, one of the paths, I guess, of her income streams was she had retail spaces. And as a little person, and I still love it now, I'm very creative in an artistic way. And I asked her if I could sell my paintings in her shop. I was about 8 or 9, Like I was really little, but she's like, okay, but you have to do everything to do with it. So like, and I didn't realize at the time, but I was making signs. So I was doing my own marketing and like just choosing a price point and all of this kind of stuff. So I sold out and I was really happy about that, which was fantastic, having some actual cash in your pocket I'm sure I was 8 at the time. So I think that kind of sparked an interest in business for me early on. And then I went and did other things. My original career, my undergraduate was actually, I was a registered nurse. A lot of people are like, okay, nursing to business, but it did make sense at the time. It's a great career. It allowed me to travel and see the world and really get out there and to connect with people and different cultures, and such an incredible grounding point in learning how to actually speak with people, and often people in very difficult scenarios and situations, which is, in business, it's different. We're not talking life and death necessarily in business, but people in a pressure point, in a real stressful, often situation is what we have to deal with, right? Lived overseas, spent time living in the UK, and sort of headed home to Australia after nearly 5 years away. And within a year, I was back at university studying again. So again, lifelong lover of learning. One of my thrive factor archetypes, which we'll get to the archetypes, is the mentor teacher. So I have always immersed myself in as many learning opportunities as possible. But I did a postgraduate degree in business and marketing at that time, kept working in a private health setting, did more studies. I had trained as a counsellor when I was in the UK. I have therapy qualifications, and all of those things combined came to a pressure point in my employee life and went, I can't be this. This is not working for me anymore. And I was coming up to my long service leave, which is something that we get here in Australia. I'm not sure. I think it's different in different parts.
Oh, when we were living there and one of our friends was coming up on it, we're like, what?
Yeah, I know. What did
you just get a nice long chunk of time off of work after you worked a certain number of years? Like, this is magic.
Yeah. I guess government kind of system. Once you've worked for 7 years, you get a period of time off that's paid. In a private enterprise, once you've worked for a continuous 10 years, you get a period of time off. But for me, that was an opportunity to go, I'm resigning and I'm going to take that payout as my seed money for my business. At the time, I needed to make sure I was, like I guess all of us do when we start business. They still had a mortgage to pay, bills to pay. My husband at the time, we're no longer together, but he freaked out completely. What do you mean you're not going to have a job? Like, he's a job kind of person that's always going to be employed. I'm like, just go with me on this. Like, I know I can do this. I've got all the skills, all the desire as well. The next thing you know, here we are. I'm coming up for 2024 will be my 19th year in business.
Wow.
So that's kind of the highlight story of how we got to entrepreneurship.
That's amazing. And has it always been coaching?
Yeah, it has really. In the beginning, because I had therapy qualifications, I'm a qualified art therapist and then have counseling prior to that. I did do some therapy work, but I never wanted to purely do that. I knew I wanted to work with people, and business had always made sense to me. It had a lot of opportunity to work in the business and operational kind of space in corporate, which I loved, and having that background of the family in small business.
Yeah.
It's just, I go there. And hey, some people, and I'm sure you're the same, have just got natural skills that make you so attuned to being a coach and to working with people in that kind of dynamic. And all of the things I'd learned through counseling and then art therapy, I knew that I didn't want to work with someone in an analytical sense, which a lot of those kind of professions are. But I also saw the benefit of working closely one-on-one or in small groups with people. So I had done coaching qualifications initially in my corporate role, in-house kind of training, and then I've done plenty more since. So it just makes sense to me to work with people like that. And I think it's such an incredible way for us to just create so much, co-create with our clients.
Yeah, I love that. And can you share with us a little bit more about the Thrive Factor framework?
Yes, you get me talk about this for days on end. So the Thrive Factor framework came about through my love of, again, human behavior and being fascinated by how we function, how we dysfunction as well. That also has interested me. And I can take myself back to my teenage years, which are a long time ago now. I was reading the work of Carl Jung, who's one of a number of people who has written and studied and kind of put forward theories and hypotheses and all sorts of things around archetypes. And it was a really big part of the body of his work. And that, again, it just made sense to me that, yes, there are certain types of people, and that also we're not one type, we're multidimensional, which we all are.
Yeah.
It's kind of a big term in the business space, isn't it? Being multidimensional or multifaceted with how we are, particularly is in the entrepreneurial space. But none of us are linear and just one type.
Right.
And then I have studied more about that through different times in my life, and then got to my art therapy training. And there was, a massive module all on archetypes. I'm like, this just keeps coming back. And in my first few years of coaching, I have predominantly coached women. I have coached men at different times throughout my time in my business in Thrive Factor Co. But predominantly I've coached women, and these days I only coach women in business. And I just kept seeing and hearing patterns coming through, which were the archetypes coming to life. The language that the clients were using to describe what they wanted or what their frustrations were or what wasn't working for them, how they felt, their behaviors or the lack of behavior, i.e. not taking action. Certain archetypes do certain things in certain ways. The kinds of businesses they had, the backgrounds they had in terms of their learning, the things that they did outside of their business. It was just all these patterns kept coming forward. And I don't remember what day it was necessarily, but I do remember coming to a point and going, there's archetypes here. Oh my goodness, I need to do something with this. And started documenting them. And those same 12 archetypes that I documented initially and kind of took notes on are the 12 that have been present in the Thrive Factor since 2009 when I first started defining them. And it was early 2010 when I first started using them with my clients and have done ever since. So yeah, the Thrive Factor framework is really a two-part thing. There is the archetypal profiling where we get to know what our archetypes are. There are 12 in the framework and we can have anywhere between 3 and 6 in our own unique profile. And I have over the 1,000+ women I have profiled over all this time. There's been a couple of women that legitimately have had 7, but like 2. So, and I just look and go, I'm happy with 4. That's complex enough. Imagine having 7. And the other part of it is the coaching methodology that I have created and continue to evolve and expand over time. So not only do I use them in my business, I also have a self-leadership coaching certification using the Thrive Factor framework. So there are Thrive Factor coaches in the world, only a small number of them now. I have a massive vision for how big that will be and how global that will be. But currently I'm the only one who's actually using them with women in business, which again is a fabulous and exciting uniqueness. But equally, I can't wait for there to be another and then many other women using the archetypes or the Thrive Factor framework through the lens of business rather than through, the lens of mindset. Or I've got one of my Thrive Factor coaches as a money coach as well, other different ways. So it's very exciting to see what comes to life when I feel like it's such an honor sitting across from a woman whether it's like this and on a virtual sense or in person and introducing her to parts of herself.
Yeah.
That she'll always recognize she may have a good relationship with, she might not have a good relationship with, but just it's such a privilege to be able to do that. And time again, I get this feedback that mostly the women that have come and been interested in learning their Thrive Factor archetypes are the ones who'll admit that they've taken kind of every personality assessment kind of thing under the sun, even to the free kind of fun ones that we can do on Facebook, like what kind of Disney princess you are, or those kind of things.
Right.
There's an example, through to the more detailed ones like your disc profiling and Myers-Briggs and all of those kind of things. And so often they will say to me, yeah, those things have kind of given me some insight, but nothing has actually told me who I am like this has. Bands me even more to want to get it out into the world. So yeah, so it's very, very fun.
I love that. It's so exciting.
Yeah, we look at also the archetypes through the lens of what I call the 4 M's of momentum, which is mindset, money, marketing, and magnetism. So we look at their innate strengths and we also look at their potential challenges. And potential is a really key word in that relationship with challenges, because you and I may both have 4 archetypes. So we may have 3 the same, and the 4th one that's different can change the way the other 3 present in us, in us in so many different ways. So when you read about a solo archetype, I've got a couple of books and all the teaching that I do, if I talk about a single archetype and I talk about the potential challenges, it doesn't mean they're going to become your reality.
Right.
Yeah. And that's not altered really. I evolved the language of traditional archetypal language of light and shadow to be strengths and potential challenges, because I wanted to bring it kind of into the modern world rather than the shadow work, which I adore, but I found working in the psychological space in those different areas, that shadow as a exploration definition got such a bad rap and was perceived as such a negative thing. And I don't see it like that. I see it as actually the greatest potential for us when we meet our shadow. So I call it potential challenges, and people want to lean into it more then, which is, I also think is such a benefit. So
yeah, I love that. Language is so important. And if people want to find out what archetype they are, do they have to is it like a live profiling session? Is there a quiz or an assessment that they go through? What does that look like?
Yeah, there's a few different ways to get to know, or to start the experience. There is a free quiz that's available where you'll get to meet one of your archetypes, which is a good way to kind of get to know what it's all about and to understand the language and to learn about one part of yourself. Beyond that, then we move into actual profiling, either with myself or another Thrive Factor coach, where that involves taking the same online assessment that you do for the free quiz, and you then have a one-on-one coaching session to meet your archetype. So, there's different ways to do it. Some people just like to get started and just to, get to know. And I find that a lot of women that take that free assessment are very curious to know then what the rest of their archetypes are.
I'm sure.
Convert to or upgrade themselves, if you like, make the investment into actually doing profiling. And then I include it in all of my programs, masterminds, any private work that I do with clients. That's the first step, because I want to know your archetypes before we get started. And I want to introduce you to those parts of yourself. And then we weave everything that we do from a business coaching and self-leadership coaching perspective. Everything is considered through the lens of your archetype. So it's personalized, which I think is such an important thing these days. So much coaching, right? So generic. And so one size fits all, which never works.
Correct.
But everything I do is always through the lens of who you are.
I love that.
So fun as well. And I wish this is the kind of coaching that I'd been able to kind of find and invest in for myself way back
when. I know. Isn't that always how like the best offers come to be? It's like, this is what I wish I had, but it didn't exist. And so I created it.
That's it. And very much it was by accident, I guess, if you want to look at that, because I didn't intend on creating an archetypal framework. And there's been times, certainly in those first few years, where I would talk about it with people and they'd be like, what language are you speaking? Like, what is this strange word you're using? And of course, now archetype is much more commonly used in our language. And I think majority of people do have an understanding of what an archetype is. So, see it very presently, I think, with the rise of people's interest in human design. And then there's a reference to archetypes there. Archetypes are referenced in astrology. It's just so many different places. So I think most people have a reasonable understanding of what an archetype is.
Yeah, I totally agree. I joined a mastermind back in, I don't know, I guess 2018. And one of the women in there at one point was like, I just love a good archetype. Like she was going to develop a quiz. And I was like, archetype? Like it was a word that I hadn't heard in
people haven't
long. And now it's like, oh yeah, I've done Enneagram, I've done DISC, I've done human design, like all the things. And so I agree with you that it is becoming more mainstream.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, if we go back and we think about the ancient philosophers where the whole notion of archetype came from, like it's literally made of two ancient Greek words, arche and tupos, which means first impression. And Plato, one of those ancient Greek philosophers, was apparently the first person to use the word archetype. But, they also were the ones that hypothesized about, well, who are we? That know thyself. Like, so we, as human beings, we've been on a trajectory of trying to understand who on earth we are, our entire born lives, right? You think so much in the world is always challenging you to question or to know who you actually are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. So on your entrepreneurial journey, did you go through struggles around like how to price your services, whether they were worth it? Like these tend to be like the common challenges that women face in business, especially when you go from nursing and things like that, where there's just a standard rate and that's the going rate for nurses. And then you're like, I'm going to be a coach. And it's like, well, I mean, that could be $0 to $10 million to work with you. So what does that actually look like?
And I think if somebody said no to you to those questions, that I don't feel that they're actually being authentic, because every one of us, when you step into the business space, having been in an employee space, and for me, it was nursing, and then it was in the corporate space, and somebody else determines what you get paid per hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I certainly know that I got to a point in one of my kind of latter corporate roles where I realized how many times I was being charged out at a full-time rate, like multiple times over. And then what I was actually getting in my hand, I went, no, this is screwed. Like, this is not okay.
Yeah.
You're charging me out full-time times 5 and I'm still getting this much, right? A tiny bit of what the company's taking for my supposed full-time services to multiple clients at once.
Right.
Like, this is okay. So I think, when we come to business initially, we don't know how to price ourselves. Most people don't understand about the different tax systems in different countries. for being self-employed, in how to kind of keep records of things, and then how to actually market yourself. I was grateful I had some marketing background, but marketing in a bigger organization and marketing in a small one are not one in the same.
Right.
And I also love to say this, particularly when I'm kind of out doing in-person networking, and there's a lot of younger or newer business owners. When I started my business, we didn't have social media like we do now.
Right.
Well, just like social media is the place to market themselves. Well, that didn't exist.
Yeah.
Right? And people, what did you do? How, what, they're like, what? And it's like, well, you networked, and there was some online stuff. So you did kind of network online, but we didn't have social media in the way we do now. I remember taking out like advertising in magazines that would get out to my ideal clients, in trying to get in like interviews on radio, like as many kind of what I would call traditional marketing.
Yeah.
Sending out newsletters, like printed things to people when you could actually get their addresses. And it was, I think, a lot, in many ways, creative in a very different way. But
right.
But I had all of the, I think you would say, regular or commonly seen or known money kind of challenges. Not so much did I think that I wasn't worth a certain amount, but getting comfortable giving yourself a figure for an exchange of your time or a program you've created, or like even pricing books, retreats, like all the things I've done. Speaking, another game entirely, and then pricing yourself to your speaking fee, but then also negotiating whether or not you get your travel and your accommodation included. Like there's so many different things to consider. And I think most of us, and this is what my path was, we go out and we try and find evidence of what other people are charging.
Yeah.
That be our benchmark, not realizing that those individuals we might be coming across may be basing their pricing and whatever they're doing, their pricing models, whether they're being pay in full or payment plans, all on their own, not so fabulously healthy money mindset.
Right.
Money challenges. So over the years, I've done a lot of time and investment into money mindset coaching. I don't know if you're familiar with the sacred money archetypes that Kendall Summerhawk created. They've been around a long time now. I did her very first money coaching program using those archetypes in, I think it was about 2011, maybe 10 or 11. And I just have loved learning about money mindset to challenge myself, because I knew there were things that were present that I didn't even have awareness of, but that were sabotaging that's kind of feels like the best word to use, the reality of things. And then, you work with different coaches or mentors and they tell you to double your prices. And you're like, I'm not even comfortable with the price I have. Like, just lean in and just double it, like not giving you the framework and support table. But how do you do that? How do, we know more now about our nervous system and all of that kind of thing. But when that was talked about first with me, there was no talk about how you actually feel into being okay to do that and having the confidence and the clarity to have those conversations with people about prices that they've probably never seen before.
Yeah.
And of course, they're immediately going to go, that's too expensive, or I can't afford that. And then how to actually navigate through rejection, which we get time and time again in business, right? When someone says no, or not now, or I'm not sure. And there's all these other things that come up. So yeah, I have had, I think, all of them. Anything you could probably bring up on a list of money stuff, I've experienced it. And then just, given myself time and space and sought out mentors and learning and listening as much as I can on like great podcasts around money as well, just to see different ways to look at it and to think about it, feel about it. So,
yeah. So give us a couple examples, like what were one or two limiting beliefs that you had that you had to work through?
Yeah. One of the it was kind of one of the biggest aha moments I had when I was doing some money coaching many years ago now, was exploring like your family story around money. And something that came up for me that I hadn't even recognized was there until that point in time was my dad, bless him, had always said to me, the creative stuff you do is great, but it's never going to make you any money. So I'd have this story implanted and reinforced from him, who's he tried entrepreneurship for a bit, didn't work, went back to being an employee, thought he'd failed after his family, and his parents had a business, but he couldn't do it. Like there was lots of other things going on. but he was very much around you do the safe thing when it comes to money. So you make sure you're always going to get paid and you're going to be able to pay your bills and contribute to society and not have stress around money. So there's me talking about doing very creative things initially, not kind of thinking about that I ending up in business, but talking about whether I wanted to be a graphic designer or be an artist. And no, he was not having any of that. He's just like, but you're intelligent, like use your brain was the way you used to talk about it rather than looking at the intelligence that's inherent in creativity. Like he couldn't kind of see that, right? And this kind of writing these stories out about the things that I'd heard. And I was like, oh, wait a second. I've literally been paid my entire life to be creative because I don't see creativity just as artistic skill. So, and I remember having that conversation with him. He's passed now, but this was when he was still alive. And he's like, did I really say things like that? He had no recollection of it, right? None at all. And I was like, Dad, you used to say it over and over. Like, you've got to use your brain. You're intelligent. You're smart. You've got to study to a certain level and you want to do really well. And I was the first one in my family, for example, on Dad's side to get a degree at university. So there was a lot of pressure to use my intelligence rather than my creativity because he just having fun painting on the side was not going to ever make sure that I was secure in the world.
And like hence the nursing degree. That's something my
mum was a nurse.
And it's so easy. Like when you say that, everyone understands what your job is going to be.
Right? I found it interesting then, even moving into coaching as long ago as I did, people going, well, what do you mean? Like, what is that? Like, what are you doing? And I think so many of us grow up with an understanding, not so much these days, but back then, coaches were people that we maybe had for sports teams at school, right? You didn't have a coach for other things. And I'd had access or an incredible experience with a coach in a corporate setting. So I kind of was like, I remember sitting there and going, what is this mystical, magical thing? Like I have to do this, right? It was so good. But I was thinking of a big money mindset thing that I was able to, again, bring awareness to so I could change it. Or some money story, again, it was another familial related story, which was around, and it came from every aspect of my family, both sides, was that you have to work really, 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 really hard. And then you'll do okay, and that will be great. Don't want too much.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, even kind of listening to my family members and looking at how much work they did and how much time and effort and energy was going into just getting by. And even as a younger person thinking, this is not okay. This is a bit crappy, really. Like I don't want this. Yeah. But being able to then unravel that, where it had come from, and to reframe that was a huge shift for me. And that certainly in times where I've had different ups and downs with money, because we all do, right? Yeah. It's just inherent with being, I think, human and working and having money in our world, that it doesn't always necessarily flow like we want it to. It's not always consistent. It's not always abundant. We have unexpected bills that come up. We have impacts like I have this year on my business where I couldn't work and do things that I usually would do. And money changes all the time. Yeah. So when you can work with all those, I know you call them money wounds. I'm so looking forward to having you on my podcast and talking more about them.
Yeah.
That we can shift things. Right. And have that different level of, I guess, sense of internal security and resilience. So even in the challenging times, we know we can still move forward into a more abundant phase and hopefully more consistently, sustainably abundant phase in our life.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing those examples. I'm sure they resonated with so many people listening.
If you resonate, reach out to me. I'd love to know, because I think it's
right.
When you have some similarity and sense of resonance in stories. I think it's always good to know you're not alone, because you never are. We don't necessarily talk about them. We're never alone with them.
Yeah. My observation is that you have to work really hard is really going away. Like every generation, it has a different belief around that. And I see it like in Gen Z, they don't have hustle culture really at all. Either. And they don't believe that they do have to work hard to get the things that they want. And so some people label that as bad, but I'm just like, dang, this is so cool to see that as each new generation comes around, they understand the exchange in a new way. And I think there's really an opportunity for us older generations to learn from that and witness it. And I notice my mind, even like the money making ideas that I have, often still involve a little bit of hustle or like, it's going to be a pain to get this set up. But once it's set up, it'll be good. And it's like, oh, that's still there. And then I see the younger generations that like just don't have that. They're like, oh, I'm just going to post once on TikTok and make a gazillion dollars. And then they do. And it's like, wow, okay.
I know it's so different. Is that I'm really intrigued. I don't have children, but I am an aunt, and the kids in my life are in their, they're still, one of them still really little, is nearly 7, but the others are all teenagers, and I'm so intrigued to see what they're kind of in their 20s and 30s, and when they go into like relationships and family and that kind of thing, what their relationship with money is going to be like, and how they respond to what kind of careers they'll choose if someone does end up in self-employment. Because it's been there in my family all along. So who's kind of going to do it in the next generation? I'm looking forward to hopefully being a good role model for whoever does step up to that. Yeah,
definitely. I know. I love that too. I mean, I have kids of my own, and they're like, sometimes when I'll just ask them questions or I'm just observing them, because they're 5 and 8. And so like they're the age where so many of our like inner child memories are. And it's like just fascinating to witness like how deeply they feel, and the things that as a parent, you kind of want to shrug off, like, get over it. This isn't that big of a deal, but you see how much it matters to them. And then I'll ask them questions about money and stuff. And it's really cute because they haven't been conditioned by the world yet. And I just love to observe it.
I know, it's so interesting. And then, but as you see, as they get older, because you wait till they get to their teens and you start to hear the different things in their language coming through in relation to money. And I'm noticing this more so with my older nieces who are, 17 and nearly 19. I can hear like my brother coming through. I can hear their mum coming through. I can, the language around things to do with money. I was like, this is interesting how, that familial influence is always going to be there, but also they've got the outside world influencing them. And yet they're still in this young generation of working and reacting and responding to the world so differently to what we had.
Yes.
It's like, that's interesting what still gets imprinted.
It is. I know. For the, like you and I that just nerd out on human psychology, it's just like the most fascinating thing ever. But I want to dive a little deeper with you, because you mentioned how this year you had kind of a health challenge come up, like something changed, and then that kind of changed your business. And I think for so many, whether in entrepreneurship or not, that can happen where it's like, oh, hang on, we're not business as usual. Something has to change. And I'm curious what that was like for you.
Yeah. Well, like many things related to our health, completely unexpected to start with. So we're back to May of 2023. I was in Bali for the first time since the end of 2019 to host a retreat again, which I have done for years, and so excited about everything that was going to happen. And the night before retreat started, and before there was 7, 8 amazing ladies coming to join me for a week, I slipped on a stair, slipped on a stair, and ended up on my backside 180 degrees the other way. And I knew I had injured my knee, right? So I got to the pharmacy the next morning, got a knee brace to wear, like one of those compression ones, got some anti-inflammatory medication, got an ice pack. The nurse comes out, right? You never forget the basics of rest, ice, compression, and elevation. And well, okay, everyone's about to arrive. I made one tiny change to the schedule so that we went to one place differently to what I had planned, because it had, the original place had thousands of stairs. And I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do this. This is not okay. But everything else just went ahead seamlessly, right? I even managed to get myself to a Western trained physio, which is quite a challenge to find those kind of individuals in parts of Asia, just to get some treatment and some support to open up. And so I could have more flexibility in my knee. But I knew that I'd injured the same knee previously. It was not the same injury. but I had enough understanding to know that I probably had done something quite serious, but I just got checked with the physio. Do I need to move my flight and come home earlier? Because I had another 6 days after retreat finished in Bali. And she's like, no, wait, because then you'll have less swelling and it'll be less of a compromise. Even though where I live in Perth on the west coast of Australia, it's only a 3.5-hour flight to Bali. So not like the rest of the world. It's like, oh, they're so close. It's just like, up the road. But still, she's like, no, don't go earlier, don't fly. But when I got home, had the MRI, I discovered that I had ruptured the anterior cruciate ligament, so a key ligament for stability in my knee, and I had tears in both of my meniscus, and they are the kind of the cushiony pieces between the bones of our knee to may help our knee to actually do its stuff. So as my GP said to me, you've really stuffed up your knee. So thanks, I saw an orthopedic surgeon, and then I had to do a whole lot of physio to build up all the muscles in my leg so I could be prepared to have surgery. So end of July, kind of 2 and a bit months after my injury, I had an ACL reconstruction. And with that meant that the travel that I had planned, the speaking that I was being paid for, which was not local, which was on stages again, some of the other teaching work that required me to stand, it all had to go. I couldn't do it, right? And then mentally coping with the injury, it wasn't overly painful, but it was very debilitating. Not being able to, like, even pre-surgery, I didn't go very far. I became I'm not a hermit at all, never have been, but I spent a lot of time at home because my knee would just randomly give way. And I was like, I don't want a secondary injury to deal with as well. So I kind of just didn't do much. It was our winter time here, so that made it easier. But I was like, ended up staying home. And I just did not have the emotional capacity to do much in my business. And I still needed to get paid. So there was a lot of challenges and things around, not forcing myself to show up and to share what I was doing. But at the same time, you've still got the realities of you've got to keep yourself taken care of financially. And then the added medical bills as well. So like every time I turned around, people were asking me for lots of money for something to do with my knee. And I've got private health insurance and that was great, but you've still got extra that you've got to pay for. So anyway, fast forward to where we are now. We're just over 4 months post-op and my knee is great, but it's a 12-month rehab. So there's things that I live quite near the coast where I am, and I would have just gone down and gone for a nice long walk, along the beach on the soft sand. That's out until summer of next year, which is 12 months from now. I paddleboard regularly. So all the things that actually support my mindset, I can't do them. So they're all like, my life has changed so significantly. And then that also was playing out in terms of just generally my mindset. And then that flows through whatever's happening in our mindset and our emotional state flows through to our money, right? So I'm very grateful for having a friend that realized that I had the skill set that they needed in the organization that she works in. And so I've been doing some contract work, and I never thought that nearly 19 years in business that I would need to go and do that. But it's been the biggest blessing for this period of time where I haven't had the emotional, physical, mental capacity to do what I would usually do to keep growing my business. It's like, you know what? Let's not push yourself any further. You've got enough to deal with. It's a big thing to deal with. It's not taking the easy route, but at the same time, take the gift that's just been given to you with all the things about being employed for a period of time. It's contract work, but still, back to an hourly rate and stuff is actually made me more determined to get my business back in the way it was moving.
Right. Yeah. Well, I love that you share that, because I have talked to so many people over the last year who their story is a little different than yours because they went all in on their business probably too soon. They just listened to the idea that you had to just go all in, burn the bridges, make it happen. And what they did was completely fry their nervous system. They felt tremendous pressure, and actually going back and getting a job and then growing their business on the side has been like the biggest blessing. And it's like, I'm a fan of money coming in all ways.
Exactly. It doesn't matter where it comes from. And I'm so grateful that part of my money work and exploration and building a relationship with money helped me to see that. Yeah. Because if I hadn't seen that, I have no doubt in my mind, being a very ambitious soul, that I would have decided that the reality of going and getting a contract and getting paid that way for a period of time would have felt like a failure and I would have judged myself for it. But instead it's
and I think what people don't realize is that when you get injured, that's like the rock star in your marketing department getting injured, the rock star on your fulfillment team getting injured, the rock star CEO getting injured. It's like the salesperson, every aspect of the business. And you may have people on your team that help support you, but it's a different kind of deal. And so adjusting accordingly and being like, yeah, I could really try to push myself to pretend that nothing happened and act on all cylinders, but that's not the reality.
Definitely not. And that's what I would have done. Younger me would have been pushed through because, it's not about saving face or anything, but in some regards, it's like, but people know me, like my brand and my reputation, who I am is all about, showing up, being present, doing the thing, consistently having, program in having this space of kind of leaning back from my business for a period of time has also given me an opportunity to go, you know what, the business model I was working with prior to this injury did not serve me then. It's definitely not serving me now.
Yeah.
So what can I actually do moving forward? And it's allowed my creativity to come to life in a different way. I'm seeing things differently. I'm leaning into my own archetypes. I'm always such a big practice what you teach, not what you preach.
Right.
Practice what you teach and really building an even more harmonious and rich relationship with my own 4 archetypes has again brought so much, and I'm moving forward into a new year and whatever the future holds was going to be very different. And I'm excited about that and looking forward to seeing what that translates to in terms of where I get to actually go and speak on a stage in the world. Next year, I'm doing 2 retreats, not 1. And I'm moving, just going back to Bali. We're going to Cambodia in March. And I can't wait to go to another country that I adore and share that with the women that are coming. And just, got a whole brand new program. It's something that I don't see out there in the marketplace at all. And I'm just kind of teasing a little bit of what it is at the moment while I'm still defining, kind of getting that clarity and the foundations of it. Then I can, build it. But it's all focused on the archetypes and then bringing back the coaching certification mid 2024, because again, I have seen an opportunity to expand that in a different way. And so I'm going to do that and see what happens, see how that translates to.
Well, it's so exciting. I think anything that reignites and reawakens creativity is such a gift. So I'm sorry it had to come through an injury, but I'm so excited for what's ahead for you and Thrive Factor.
I am now. I'm excited now at this point. I'm not someone who likes to be still or to be told that I can't do things. So the physical things of not being able to do has been challenging. But again, I've gone, okay, but what can I do? So even like my 2-month post-op check-in with my surgeon, I said to him then, well, I know I can't kind of just go for a nice long walk along the beach. I haven't, I'm someone we're in our summer now. I would be at the beach multiple times a week. I'm not even gone down there because of the soft sand, but also getting in and out of the ocean. Where I live, it's quite rough and I could get knocked by a wave, and I'm not having this surgery again if I can help it, right? I'm at the point where it's quite a high incidence of rupture early on. So those kind of things, can't paddleboard, can't swim. I'm not even allowed to kick yet because of the mechanism of that.
Brutal.
Knee, right? So, but I said to him, surely I can go because we've got an amazing public swimming pool just on the coast. So I can still see the beach, right? Beautiful. And I said, surely I can walk in the walking lane and get, because when you're in water, there's not that pressure of your physical body on your joints. And he's like, yeah, do that. So 3 to 4 times a week for 2 months now, I've been doing that. And I just feel like
a great idea.
A little bit of me being in the water, moving, being near the coast, I can bring little bits of me back in. So again, getting creative.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, you could do that. But if I hadn't asked, he wouldn't have offered that. It would have been, keep going to see a physiotherapist, keep doing all the exercises. Well, I am, but they're so boring. They're so important, but I'm not loving them. So
yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad you found something that works for you. And I don't know if this pool is this way, but in Sydney, I was amazed that there were so many, and actually in Newcastle too, where the pool is filled with seawater. It's like right on the ocean.
Yeah. I mean, ours is next to the ocean. We don't have the same structure where in New South Wales, where Sydney and Newcastle are on our east coast of Australia. It's a very rocky coastline, so they've built pools into that. So they call them tidal pools or sea pools.
Yeah.
Love them too. I love being over that side of the country and being in them. We don't have the same coastline. We've got a beautiful, lots of long, crisp, white, sandy beaches.
Gotcha.
Next to the ocean, but not using the seawater as such.
I see. This is so funny. And then we'll wrap up the show, but talking about entrepreneurial grandparents. My grandfather on my mom's side, he had a business down in Florida, and it was an underwater treadmill for racehorses.
Oh, that's
because a lot of the best racehorses from like the northern part of the East Coast, they would trailer them down to Florida for the winter. And the underwater treadmill was a great way for them to get tons of exercise without any impact on the joint. Like, how funny is that?
I read somewhere in doing, again, this is the mental teacher archetype coming out and the researching, understanding it, is like the walking in water can give you 3 times the impact of just walking out of water. Because like, not only am I getting really good exercise, I'm actually going to maintain some fitness, and I can do great stretching in the water that feels very different. And the difference, I've still got some stiffness in my knee because it's only 4 months since I had the surgery.
Yeah. The
difference between when I get into the pool and when I get out an hour later is phenomenal. So it's like, just go, right? Just go. I'm not sure by the time we get to our winter next year, which is even quite a mild winter, that I'm still going to want to go.
Right.
Work it out. We'll work it out.
Cross that bridge when you get there.
That's it. That's it.
In the meantime, please share how everyone listening can connect to you and maybe meet one of their archetypes or plug into some of your coaching or even listen to your podcast.
Yeah. Thank you. Probably the best place to go is to connect with me on Instagram. So that's Shannon_the Thrive Factor. That is my primary place to share anything. I am on Facebook. I am on LinkedIn. I regularly contribute like blogs via my podcast to my website. But really, if you want to interact with me and connect with me, head to Instagram. And then the fact we can share 5 different links, I've got all the key links for everything is in there. So the latest podcast episode, my podcast, She Leads, She Thrives, is available on all the podcasting platforms, quite easy to find. If you Google or search for Shannon Dun, you probably should find it as well. But that link in my Instagram bio for the free assessment is in there as well. So it actually says take the free, Thrive Factor or archetype assessment. I can't remember the exact language now, but it's not hard to find. But if you can't find it, DM me and I will send you the link. Make it
amazing. Yeah. And we'll make sure to throw those links into the show notes as well. I know I want to take the assessment as well. So thank you so much for being here. As a final question, what does it look and feel like for you to be on the joyous path to millions?
It feels like a sense of freedom. And I know a lot of people use that phrase like money freedom. But for me, it's kind of looking into the future and being able to make investments in things that are important to me. Whether that's a charity that I am interested in supporting, or like I said, I've got 3 nieces and a nephew, being able to contribute to set up their lives and to give them different opportunities that they may not have without that. And to be able to keep traveling, to have choice. I think freedom and choice are 2 the things that go together. So, and it's also, I feel like it's such an exciting time. Being self-employed is so different to being an employee where you are reliant on an hourly rate and certain circumstances to earn any money. And often you're capped at what you can earn. Whereas, being self-employed, yes, it has its challenges. Yes, it can be really hard at times. All that things that you never imagined would come to life, right? Your money mindset stuff, your money wounds come out of nowhere and keep coming at you until you work with them. But I think the rewards are so much greater and for me, richer, and do create a sense of freedom of having that choice to work how I want to work, to do what I want to do, to work with who I want to work with, to travel how I want to travel, and to contribute how I want to contribute. So it's an exciting time indeed.
I feel that so deeply. Shannon, thank you so much for coming on the show. To everyone listening, thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
I hope you loved Shannon as much as I did. So make sure you go into the show notes or go check out Shannon at Shannon_Thrive Factor on Instagram, and then click the link in her bio so that you can take the free assessment and get access to her work. You can also, of course, share on Instagram that you've been listening to The Joyous Path to Millions. You can tag me at mmakesmoney. You can tag Shannon, Shannon_Thrive Factor. Let us know what your top takeaway was. Here are mine. Number one, get curious about human psychology. I think especially if you're in this realm of coaching and consulting, the more you understand human behavior, the better. Number two, learning about yourself is of great value. I love astrology and human design and all of the archetypal quizzes because I always learn a little something more about myself. It doesn't mean it's the end all be all or that I remember all of it, but this path to self-discovery is so important. Number three, all money is good money. Doesn't matter whether it comes through a job, contract work, entrepreneurship, money falling out of the sky, winning the lottery, getting an inheritance, all money is good money. Number four, even obstacles and setbacks have unexpected gifts. And I loved how Shannon shared that story and how it's really opened her up to more creativity. And number five, build something bigger than you. When I hear Shannon talk about her framework and her vision, it goes so far beyond her. It goes to teaching other coaches this methodology and having a framework that can impact thousands and thousands of people and help them understand themselves better. And I love that thinking big and also building big. So thank you so much for tuning into this show. It absolutely means the world. And if you want to even go extra, like the whipped cream and cherry on top, you could go to iTunes or Spotify and leave us a review. It really helps more people to discover the show, and it helps us to reach more listeners. So thank you in advance, and I will see you on the next episode. Listeners like you have made this a top 3% global podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, share, and leave a review. I also love hearing listener feedback, so feel free to slide into my DMs on Instagram at mmakesmoney. If you would like to explore hiring me as your money healer and business mentor, hit the link in the show notes or head to explore.emilywilcox.com. Until next time, I'm sending you all the magic money vibes on your joyous path to millions.